What is prohibition and what was the purpose of the 18th Amendment? The United States Constitution states that the manufacture, sale, transportation, and exportation of intoxicating liquors in the United States and all of its territory is hereby prohibited. The purpose of the 18th Amendment was to establish prohibition and make it clear that the sale, manufacture, and transportation of liquor was officially legal in the United States. What problems did people see in society at the turn of the century? According to the National Temperance Council, problems people saw in society were bad health, financial trouble, and pressure on the hospitals, jails, and mental institutions due to crime. The people were worried that alcohol was negatively affecting the public's health and safety and knew that they couldn't ignore it any longer. Why did they think prohibition would solve these problems? The National Temperance Council thought that prohibition would solve these problems because if alcohol was no longer being made, sold, or transported, then it wouldn't be hurting the public since they couldn't have access to it. They thought that if the public no longer drank intoxicating liquors, then that would mean less tuberculosis, less poverty, less dependency, less pressure on our hospitals, asylums, and jails, as quoted by a member of the National Temperance Council. What strategies/evidence did temperance advocates use to convince people to support prohibition? The Scientific Temperance Federation used posters about the downfalls of alcohol on children as a strategy. They depicted different studies and research on children who came from temperate families versus children who came from intemperate families. According to their research, 50 out of 60 children from temperate families were born normal, whereas only 10 out of 57 children from intemperate families were born normal. The other 47 of those children from intemperate families were born with abnormal qualities. This particular temperance group used deformed children as an example of what can happen when expecting mothers drink alcohol. They are supporting prohibition by showing the public what can happen to their children if they get access to liquor. Do I find their arguments convincing? Do I think people at the time found their arguments convincing? Why or why not? I find their arguments pretty convincing. If I were living in the 1920s and found that being intemperate would lead to my children having health problems, I wouldn't drink the intoxicating liquors, especially knowing all of the deformities that my children could be born with. I don't think that people at the time found their arguments convincing, however, because the public still continued to drink alcohol, completely ignoring the fact that it could lead to serious health problems for themselves and for their unborn children. I don't think people cared enough back then to realize all of the problems in society, much less the problems in their own children. Since there were all of these speakeasies in the 1920s, people wouldn't hesitate to get liquor, especially if it was a place they could get it without being caught by the police. Why does the author of Document B single out immigrants? The author of the Hooch murder bill singled out immigrants because they had started selling poison for profit instead of killing people with a knife, which to the author meant the same thing because both actions killed people. They wanted this law to capture the immigrants who were selling liquors that killed people because if they could catch them killing people with a knife, they'd have to make a bill that says they can catch them indirectly murdering others with the sale of their alcohol.